Isaiah 11, we're at the start of Isaiah 11 this morning. So let's just take a moment now before I read the word of God. A shoot will come up from the stump of Jesse. From his roots, a branch will bear fruit. The Spirit of the Lord will rest on him. The Spirit of wisdom and of understanding, the Spirit of counsel and of might, the Spirit of the knowledge and fear of the Lord. And he will delight in the fear of the Lord. He will not judge by what he sees with his eyes or decide by what he hears with his ears. But with righteousness he will judge the needy. With justice he will give decisions for the poor of the earth. He will strike the earth with the rod of his mouth. With the breath of his lips he will slay the wicked. Righteousness will be his belt, and faithfulness the sash around his waist. The wolf will live with the lamb. The leopard will lie down with the goat, the calf and the lion and the yearling together, and a little child will lead them. The cow will feed with the bear. Their young will lie down together, and the lion will eat straw like the ox. The infant will play near the cobra's den, and the young child will put its hand into the viper's nest. They will neither harm nor destroy on all my holy mountain. For the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. In that day, the root of Jesse will stand as a banner for the peoples. The nations will rally to him, and his resting place will be glorious. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Let's give it up for Reverend Matt Bray.
Well, good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year. That was for the Anglicans in the room, because Advent starts the new year in the church. Great. It went down just as good as it did at the 9, so... But no, Advent, it begins, it's the start of the church calendar in the life of the church. It's a time of preparation. It's a time of getting ourselves ready. And it's felt like, at least to me, that Christmas came very sharply on the scene this year. Anyone else feel like that? Halloween finished and All Saints finished, and then it was almost like the staff at all our supermarkets were like poised ready to then change the displays and start blasting Mariah Carey through the speakers, didn't it? And I'm not one to give my opinion on things from the stage often, but it felt a little bit too early for me this year. I'm already exhausted by it. And Advent has only just started today, adding now to that noise of getting ready and things needing to be prepared. Well, not to cause you any more anxiety, but how is your Christmas prep going? Is it all right? Are you ready? Have you ordered all your food? Have you got your lists all sorted out? Have you got the tree? Have you got the presents? Have you worked out you're staying in the Bay, or are you going elsewhere to family and friends? I mean, actually, who has got their decorations up already? Amazing. And the rest of you are Anglican. You're waiting for Christmas Eve, right? Christmas Eve, and then you keep it there until March. That's the way to do it. Just spotted a friend who definitely got his decorations out post-Halloween on his street. We did it yesterday. We went to the tree, went to Marden, did the whole experience, and it was great. But, amongst all of that, I've still got carols, service talks to write. I've got assemblies to prepare for. I've got the Christmas spectacular, the finishing touches to do. I've got things to get ready. And the one thing that really drives me in seasons like this is that I don't ever want to feel like I'm unprepared. I don't want to get to that moment and go, oh, have I prepared enough? And that's going to be the question right up until the day itself. Have I prepared enough? You might find the preparation really stressful. You might be one of those weird ones who really enjoys the preparation for it. You might find it's too much. Or maybe it distracts you from being in the moment and actually enjoying the moment with so much going on and so much to do. I sense that our culture now, particularly how early it felt like Christmas stuff came on the scene, but I fear it skips Advent a bit too quickly, and we miss the beauty and the richness that Advent, the season of Advent, can bring to our lives. With the busyness and so much going on and the build-up with everything, I want to encourage us this morning to not just simply prepare the stuff and prepare the things, but to also prepare ourselves and to prepare with purpose. Because Advent, Christmas, it's not just another stop on the merry-go-round that is life and the calendar, and Christmas has arrived again. But actually through this season, God yet once again wants to meet with you and wants to draw you into the story of his love and the love that he displays to us through Jesus Christ. Advent isn't just about remembering when Jesus first came to the earth. It's in part that. But actually, Advent is a reminder that he is coming again. He's coming again, like we read in the Isaiah reading, this picture of what it's going to look like when Christ returns and restores all things to himself. There will be harmony, there will be unity, and there will be joy for all the ages. And that's what we long for. And so Advent is a time where we remember, oh yeah, that's coming, and I need to prepare myself for it. I need to prepare myself to be ready for that day. And that's what Jesus does in us through this season. So my prayer for myself and my prayer for us as well as the church is that we wouldn't get distracted by the noise and the busyness and all the preparation that we're going to be going through, but that we would keep our hearts and our eyes open to what God may be teaching us through this season, to what God may be wanting to speak to us about, to open to what God wants to do in us and through us during this season. So I want to talk about how to prepare with purpose. How do we prepare with a purpose? And I want to go through 4 stages. I'm going to do 2 this week. I'm going to do the other 2 next week. I want to look at, firstly, knowing where to start. How do we know where to start? Then I want to look at how do we, knowing our approach to the season. And then finding the tools that are going to help us through the season. And then finding the joy in the season. So let's look at the first 2. These are knowing parts. So knowing where to start. Well, Fiona, my wife, just the other day, she said to me, I'm a bit tired because I've got this whole list of things to do. And then she said, I almost made a list, or made a new list where I just put the things that we need to do today and get on with that. Because with all that needs doing, with all that needs preparing and getting ready, sometimes it can feel really overwhelming to know where to start. Where do we start when we prepare for Christmas? But the starting point for Advent then, the starting point is our hearts. That's the starting place when preparing ourselves with a purpose. We start with our hearts. Hey, so I worked it out, and it's been at least 2 months, maybe more, since I last used an analogy from my running. So here we go again. Reset the clock. Let's go. Just this week, I started a new 12-week training program for a half marathon, which I'm going to run in February in Exeter. So 12-week training block has started. And this 12 weeks, it's split up into 3 phases. The final stage is called the peak phase. That's where it's the most amount of mileage, the hardest sessions, really going for it, and then a small little taper off before the big race day where I'm going for a specific time and a specific personal best. So that's the peak phase. It's really important. But then before that, right in the middle, you have the build phase. And the building phase is when you're building up the distance. You're gradually getting more and more mileage into the legs, and you're running, you're building your endurance, you're building your stamina. But the first phase in this training block that I've got is called the preparation phase. Who knew that running plans were Anglican? The preparation phase. And in the preparation phase, what you're doing is you're establishing a foundation on which to build. But it's not just your legs. When you run, you think, oh, that's all your legs. But it's not just your legs that you're preparing in this phase. It's your heart. It's my heart. I'm conditioning my heart. In this first phase, I'm essentially conditioning my heart for what's to come. I'm getting my heart ready for what's to come in February. Preparing a base for me to build on. I'm easing my heart into all the strain that it's going to be put under on the race day. I'm easing my cardiovascular system into this training block with all that's going to come at it. I'm preparing a base to build on. It's also called base level training, zone 2 training if you really want to get into it. But it's probably the most important part of the training block because I need my heart to be ready. I need my heart to be prepared. I need my heart to be ready for what I want it to do in February, come race day. It all starts with the heart. And for our lives as well, everything we do flows from the heart. It's the book of Proverbs that says, above all else, guard your heart. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Your life, everything flows from it. So protect it, look after it, focus on it. If we have a spiritually unhealthy heart, then stressful, busy, and chaotic seasons like Advent, like Christmas, when they come, they only draw out that more. They only reveal that more, the unhealthy spiritual heart. Maybe we're carrying bitterness. Maybe we carry pain in our hearts. Maybe we carry some sense of shame. Maybe our hearts feel lonely. Maybe we have these feelings in our hearts of being unappreciated or of being overlooked, or maybe we feel undervalued. And in the seasons of stress and chaos, those come out more if we aren't looking after our hearts right. Our hearts can be fickle, can't they? We can be feeling great. We can be on top of the world. We're desiring beings, aren't we? We live for what we love. We're drawn to what our hearts long for, but because our hearts can be fickle, they can draw us to things that might not necessarily be suitable for our hearts. They might not meet the needs that our hearts are longing for, the deeper longings of the soul. And so we can be feeling great, our hearts ready for Christmas, and then someone makes that comment, or that memory pops up again, or that curveball comes round the corner. And just like that, our joy can be snatched away so quickly. I remember one Christmas where someone made a comment about something and it just stuck to me. It just stuck for way longer than it should have done. Because the comment, what it did, it prodded at a little bit of brokenness in me, a little insecurity that I hadn't processed, something that I hadn't really prepared myself to be confronted with. And it stuck with me. So above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Our hearts are so important, and that's where Jesus wants to make his home. Jesus wants our hearts, because if he can get into our heart, if he can make our heart his home, that is where he can make the biggest amount of difference in our lives. You can't sort out all your own brokenness. Reality check. You can't sort out your own brokenness, particularly or certainly not in 24 days of Advent. But the heart is the best place to start. Our hearts are going to be pulled all over the place through the stress and the build-up, in the cold and the bleakness of winter nights, in the worries of financial uncertainty, perhaps in the dynamics of family life. I mean, families at Christmas, am I right? You can be pulled all over the place. But that is exactly where Jesus wants to make his home, in our hearts, in the mess, when we allow him and invite him to do so. And so if you want to prepare yourself with purpose this Advent, then start with your heart and invite Jesus into your heart and give him the space to move and give him the space to do what he needs to do. So maybe practically speaking, you could flick open the Bible right at the middle and find the Psalms, and you can read many, many prayers of requests and prayers and songs to God, asking God to do a deeper work, particularly in our hearts. So I've got 2 verses from the Psalms, which I've decided I'm going to pray throughout Advent. And the first is from Psalm 73. It says, "My flesh and my heart fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. And then I'm going to pray Psalm 51, and I'm going to say, God, create in me a pure heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. Create in me a pure heart and renew a steadfast spirit within me. That's where we start, with our hearts. So we need to know where to start, but secondly, we need to know our approach. How are we going to approach and navigate the season? Well, the best approach to life in general, but maybe particularly Advent, is an openness and a willingness to what God is doing in your life. And the best way to do that is to pre-decide in advance your approach this season. Because what will often happen, things happen to us. Things happen to us. And then we when things happen to us, we go through this decision-making process of, how am I now going to respond to this? What am I going to do? And because we're always led by our hearts, we're not always going to make the best decisions about what we do in those moments. We might not always make the best and most mature responses to when things come our way. So we need to decide ahead of time what our approach will be. How are we going to navigate this season? How am I going to approach this season? Because I can guarantee that someone's going to upset you in the next 30 days. You might be sitting next to them. Someone or something's going to pop out of the blue. Not everything is going to go according to plan. Maybe this is a word for someone. Not everything is going to go according to plan, especially Christmas dinner. So we need to know our approach. We need to decide ahead of time, what's my approach going to be? And this reminds me of the time I used to play competitive mini golf. And yes, that is a real sentence. You probably think of mini golf as a big old game of chance. You line up, you hit the ball through an obstacle, and you hope for the best. And if it goes in the hole, it's a fluke, but hooray, we got a hole in one. Well, I'm here today to dispel the myth of mini golf. Let's take the World Crazy Golf Championships as an example. You all thought that's where we're going today, aren't we? The World Crazy Golf Championships. At which, by the way, I was the 2015 novice category winner at the World Crazy Golf Championships. So yeah, thank you, that one person. But when you play competitive mini golf, which I did for a season in my life, everyone at that competition knew how to get a hole in one. We called them aces. And they knew how to get a hole in one on every single hole. There was no guesswork. The competition was held over 2 days, Saturday and Sunday. You play 7 rounds of 18 holes, but the Friday was practice day. It was practice day, and we would spend the whole day there on Friday learning the course, learning the holes, refining our approach to get an ace. I would spend 45 minutes on just one hole at a time. And I wouldn't leave that hole until I was so sure and so certain, confident that I knew how to get a hole in one and I could get a hole in one. I'd try and get maybe 4 in a row or something, knowing that when it comes to the actual day in the tournament, in the competition, and I line up my shot, there's no guesswork. I know exactly how I'm going to approach that. So it's all then going to be down to my weight of putt and my accuracy in the moment. I mean, you think that's sad. Some of the guys had notepads which they would pull out, because if they didn't get a hole in one, they'd lined up their second shot. They'd drawn in their notepad the hole and then the surrounding area of the hole. And so if they missed their first shot, they knew exactly how they play their second shot as well. I didn't have that kind of time on my hands. But nobody goes up to the hole and says, I might try it this way for this round, or I might try it this way for that. You would be laughed off the mini golf course there. We wanted to take the guesswork out, and we want to take the guesswork out in life as well, when we can, because things are going to happen to you in life that you can't control, you can't predict. and you can't be certain of. But what we can have control over is how we are going to respond. And as Christians, how we are going to respond in faith, in faithfulness to what God is calling us to do, and live faithfully in step with God's Spirit and work in our lives. We want to be able to look now at the next 4 weeks, Advent, and line the next 4 weeks up as if we were on a mini golf course, preparing our shot, and say, this is exactly how I'm going to approach it and respond to it. For some of you, it might just be, I just need to line up tomorrow or this week. But this is how I'm going to take it on. This is my approach. This is how I'm going to navigate it. A personal story. In 2014, Fiona and I, we moved to Brighton, where we had got married, where we had been living. And we moved to Hastings to plant a new church with a team. And it was really exciting, as you can imagine, a new church plant, new excitement all around. But it was right at the moment where, as a worship team in Brighton, we'd just written these songs and we just recorded this album. And we were beginning the creativity was sort of like bursting to life within the church. And I remember just feeling worried that all I was going to feel having moved to Hastings was that I was just missing out. I'm missing out with all the excitement that's going on, with all the festivals now that are using these songs and this album. And I just remember feeling like, oh, but what if it's not as exciting where I am now, having to start things from scratch in Hastings? And so I had to pre-decide my approach. Some of the team, we only had a morning service like we do here when we started the church in Hastings. And some of the team, they would go back to Brighton to the church and worship there in the evening service. But I decided I'm not going to go back, because what I want to do is I want to solely focus on what Jesus is doing through me where I am right now. And I decided I would focus on that. And so I had to tell myself, whatever exciting musical things were happening back in Brighton, what God had in store for me, and for me especially, was going to be far more exciting, far more life-giving, and much, much better. I had to believe it, and I trusted it, and I knew that was going to be my response. That was going to be my approach. And now I look back at that time, because when you look back on your life, you can see how God sometimes makes certain things happen. You meet certain people, certain things happen to you, and certain paths are made clear for you as you look back on your life. And I remember now looking back and going, gosh, our journey to this church, to planting Bay Church, moving to the Bay, all started in Hastings. And it all started with that decision to say, look, this is where I'm going to put my trust. This is where I'm going to put my hope. This is how I'm going to respond. Because you know, I could have been resentful. I could have been bitter. I could have been sad about it. But instead, I chose to fix my eyes on Jesus and what he was doing in me, believing that it was far better, far more exciting, and it was what I was called to do. Could that be our approach this Advent? Because as we head to Christmas, I don't want to be bitter. I don't want to hold any resentment over things. I don't want to carry any disappointment. I want all the classic things of Christmas, the things we read about, joy, love, and peace, and hope. And those things come, they do come, when we approach this season with an openness to receive from God, and when we solely fix our eyes on him. That's how you'll receive peace and joy and love in the mix of all the stuff that's going to come. Those things will come. The writer of the letter to the Hebrews says, fixing our eyes on Jesus, who is the pioneer and the perfecter of our faith, for the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame. That right there, that's Jesus' approach to the cross. That's what Jesus decided to do, and nothing would distract or stop him from going to the cross, bearing our sin, bearing our shame, taking on the weight and the pain that the cross would bear. And he did it knowing that he would defeat sin and death, and that he would make it possible for us to have a right relationship with God. And he did that That was his approach. That's how he considered. And then it says here, consider him who endured such opposition so that you will not grow weary and you will not lose heart. Jesus is our example. He is our example for living life, a life of faith. Knowing how we're going to approach things and trusting in God's Spirit, trusting in God's love for it. And so today I'm just as excited for Christmas as I ever am. But I want to be prepared. But more than that, I want to be prepared with a purpose. With a purpose, because it's all about Jesus. It's all about his love for us. And I want to use this season now by looking firstly at my heart and asking Jesus to make his home there. To ask Jesus to continue to make me more and more like him. To continue to make me more and more ready for that day when he comes back and restores all things. And then I want my approach to be like that of Jesus. Like that of Jesus heading towards the cross. I want to pre-decide that whatever is thrown my way, whatever distractions, whatever disruptions, whatever's coming at me, I want to fix my eyes on him so that I will not grow weary and I will not lose heart. Know where to start and know your approach and receive again the love and the grace of Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. Shall we stand? We're going to